Sean joins us now. Morning to you, Graham.
Morning.
Thank you for coming in. It must have been the most horrendous 7 years since you lost your daughter. I can't begin to imagine the pain that you and your family and her sisters have been through. And now we're in a scenario where her killer is set to be released halfway through his sentence, as there's no need for parole. I wonder how you feel about that and whether you feel like that's fair.
Well, one thing I'd like to point out, he got found guilty of manslaughter, but I think people need to understand the gross negligence to this. I mean, at the trial, the bar was set very high, and the jury had to be convinced that Shephard had and was due to show my daughter a duty of care. And also, the jury had to be convinced that there was an obvious and serious risk of death. That's the difference between manslaughter and manslaughter by gross negligence. So Jack Shephard, to me and the family, pose a significant risk to women. He's shown no remorse. We still don't know what happened that night because he fled his trial and he didn't appear, so he wasn't cross-examined. And now we're faced with a situation where, yes, he was given a 6-year sentence for causing the death of my daughter, but he also got given a concurrent 4-year sentence for a serious assault, making a 10-year sentence. And he has an automatic right of release at 5 years, which is coming up in January. And how I feel as a father, that does not feel right. To give somebody who I consider a serious threat to women, he's a narcissist. Jack Shephard exists purely for himself. He preyed on women from dating apps with the sole intention of sleeping with them and moving on to the next women. A month after my daughter died, he married, had a child, and then he abandoned her and went to Georgia. And it turned out in the trial, his wife didn't even know that he had caused the death of my daughter a month earlier when he got married. I mean, this is a serious man who is, to my mind, is a threat to women's safety. To me, he's been released in January. Does it feel right? As a father of 4 daughters, I can honestly say I'm worried for women in general, and I will never forgive Jack for what he's done to the harm to my family. How we coping as a family, you know, you go through all the emotions, all the emotions hit you. I mean, the best I can say is time teaches you how to deal with it better. So, you know, scratch under the surface, there is still a lot of hurt and pain there. But time does teach you how to deal with it better, and I can talk about it, and I can lead a life, and I've got 3 wonderful grandsons. So, you know, life does go on, but there's always that empty place at the table.
Absolutely, which, you know, we're so sorry about that fact. And I can imagine that as a family, it's a horrific thing that you have gone through.
Yes.
And then having this happen, which is obviously deeply affecting you, the fact that he's coming up for release,
yeah,
and it seems likely that that will go ahead, you think, at the moment. Has that brought it all back? Because quite often for families, one way of them getting closure is the justice system, isn't it? Is through that, and then they're able to come to terms with it.
Well, it was a fight. It took 3 years to get Jack Shephard to court. It was an amazing, difficult, heart-rending journey to get Jack Shephard to court, and then he didn't turn up, and we thought, oh, my God, and then he gets sentenced, and then you know, I mean, not a day goes by where you don't think about your daughter. So, yeah, the criminal justice system, I mean, I saw Dominic Raab on Wednesday on your show, and he is going to review the parole process, and I was quite heartened to hear, you know, public protection is his focus.
So he's going to be talking about that serious prisoners can't be released if they still pose a risk, whatever the recommendations from the parole board, but ministers can then essentially veto that process. I
mean, it's likely that Jack Shephard will slip through the net from them, because I'm not sure if he even gets a parole hearing. I mean, the point I would make is that Jack Shephard, in my opinion, still poses a significant risk to women. And if there's anything can be done or reviewed, I would ask the Justice Secretary to perhaps look at this case and cases like it.
Tell us a little bit about your daughter, because the pictures that we've seen, she just always looked to have the biggest smile on her face and just so full of life and joy, Graham.
Well, this is always the hardest bit, talking about. It's very hard to... Charlotte was a wonderful daughter. She was full of life and, I mean, she lived for those she loved. And those she loved her back. She was a terrific daughter, full of life, and she's had her life stolen from her. I mean, it's been robbed from her. And it will always leave a sadness and a gap in our hearts. You know, I can't say more than that, I'm afraid.
And I know that, you know, she obviously had 3 sisters, and you were talking about your grandchildren, and one of them is named after her.
Yep. Katie gave birth to Charlie, who's now 2.5. At the time, you know, I mean, Katie was convinced he was going to be a boy, a girl, sorry, and it turned out to be a boy, as is the case. But yeah, he brings joy and love to our lives, and it's just been marvellous having little Charlie in our lives.
Yeah, as with all your grandsons and your daughters, undoubtedly, and your family, and keeping your Charlotte's memories alive is absolutely fundamental, isn't it?
Yeah, that we will always remember our Charlotte, our Charlie. Yeah, it's just incredibly sad. And if I'm going to end on a poignant point, I would say she is missed and loved. And it brings us back to the central point that she would have been here if it were not for that night and Jack Shephard. And he, in my mind, remains a serious threat to women.
Graham, thanks for coming in to talk to us this morning. I know
Thank
obviously
you for having me.
It's deeply personal to you, and it must be a very upsetting thing to go back over. But I know that in her name, it's important to you that you talk about this and raise this and highlight this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
For speaking.
Thanks, Graham.
Thank you.